My background is in early childhood education, and I'm also a lecturer in early childhood education. And when I think of my perspective on children's well-being in inclusive education, there are lots of factors that affect or shape my perspective. But one of the most important ones is my own experience as a young child entering primary school, which, looking back on it now, I realise was actually quite traumatic. So part of that was because as an individual, I was a very, very reserved, quiet, shy kind of child. And then on top of that, I had a birthday late in the year, so I started school quite young. I was 3 when I started my formal education, and significantly younger than other people in my class. And I found the whole thing so difficult. And it doesn't take much really to bring me back to those moments and to how I felt at that time, which was essentially afraid all of the time. I was afraid of being in the wrong place or doing the wrong thing or having to go to the toilet at the wrong time. And the whole thing really kind of stunted my first experience of school. And it actually carried on throughout my schooling. And I think really sticks with me today in good ways and bad, mostly bad. I'll get onto the good ways in a minute. But something that I felt at that time was, I kind of knew that things weren't right. I couldn't articulate to myself what was going on because I was so young, but I already had an understanding that something wasn't quite right and that things were different for me somehow, because I looked at other children around who seemed to know what the right thing to do was, or seemed to know where to be or what to do, or seemed to be able to get the teacher's attention when I just couldn't. Looking back now, I realise that none of that was my fault. I didn't quite get that understanding at the time. Now I realise it wasn't my responsibility to thrive in that environment. I was who I was. That was my makeup. That was the person I was walking in the door. And it wasn't my job or my responsibility or my role to make me thrive in that situation. I needed support. And I know now that I didn't always get it. What I do know is that the people that really did give me that support were those nurturing teachers that I met, that I came across. So I mentioned a minute ago that it affected me in bad ways and also in good ways. So the really positive way that has affected me is that now in my work with young children, ironically with that same age group, 3 and 4 year olds, when I think back, that's the age I was when I started and I was going through all that trauma. And now I look at every individual, every child that comes into me, and first of all, I really try and see who they are. And I see them in the context of the individual that they are, also the home they've come from and the family they've come from or that they're part of. I also look at the dynamic within the group in that year. So we all know that from year to year, different classes, different cohorts, different dynamics, they can be so different. So each child that comes into me, what's going on, the environment that's been made open or accessible or provided for that child. And as part of that environment, obviously the adults who are in it and the children who are in it, all that has an effect on an individual. So I need to look at that from year to year, and I need to really kind of think about that from year to year. But the really kind of strength that it's given me, that traumatic experience, is the real ability to be able to understand how certain individuals may be feeling. Not exactly the same as myself, but it enables me to hear those seldom heard children, or to reach out to those children that find it difficult to make their voice heard, sometimes to find their voice in the first place. It's easy when you're quiet and when you find it hard to engage in new situations or how to engage with new people. It's easy to just fall between the cracks. And so I really feel, as an ethical educator, it's really my responsibility to make sure that everybody that's in my class, that nobody essentially falls between the cracks, and that everybody, that I respond to children in the way that they need in order for them to thrive as the individuals that they are.
Considering Tracy's experience, I think that the definition of well-being of children in schools involves creating an environment where they feel safe, secure, loved, and engaged. This includes fostering a sense of belonging, providing opportunities for meaningful connections with others, and having the freedom of being themselves. Being themselves means respecting children's individuality, also means encouraging their agency, their ability to make choices and have a say in that matters that affect them. Another important part is considering their perspectives on their well-being. In educational settings, it's also crucial to promote peaceful and positive relationship among children, peers, teachers, and families, and staff as well. With all these, the sense of belonging means that children have the sense that they are important, equal members of that community. Anne, what do you think about children's well-being and different factors?
I think you've already mentioned a lot of dimensions which are really important, and in my research I'm really interested in relationships between students and educators, especially teachers, and I think they have a huge responsibility regarding the children's well-being, and I think also Tracy's case made it clear how they can see the individual identity of the students, how they can perceive the specific needs of the students, and also it's important that they treat them with respect. But I think it's not only about relationships.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Student-teacher relationships are extremely important. But I suppose we have to look at the socio-cultural context as well. So we have to look at well-being in terms of a multifaceted view of children's well-being. So issues like health supports, family supports, education obviously is important, which is the main focus of our chapter. But early supports for families in terms of early intervention and prevention. We know that the individual development of the child is really important, and that a nurturing, safe and secure environment is really important. And parents need to be supported in terms of providing a safe environment to their children. So Ireland is really interested in investing in children's well-being in terms of reducing inequality. So we have a changing demographic at the moment and a changing sociocultural landscape, coupled with increasing levels of poverty. We have a lot of children in homelessness, and we also have a lot of families where the roles of parents are evolving. So a lot of women are out to work now as well. So there is that need to support children in the home, particularly between the ages of 0 to 5, so often before they even reach preschool. So I think this is a huge focus for Ireland at the moment. So I absolutely agree that relationships are key and the interactions in classrooms is key. But if we look at it from a broader context, policy is also very important, and the infrastructure in those really vital, crucial years of a child to support nurturing environments is also important. I think you have some interesting insights from Iran as well to tell us.
Yeah. Most of the students in Iran study in public schools with strict rules and inflexible behavior, and all educational topics are predetermined. But there are some alternative schools, and I'm interested in to talk about their strategies. Yeah, there are many strategies for promoting well-being, such as providing a safe and respectful school climate, offering counseling and mental health support services, and welcoming environment for all students. Ensuring accessibility of facilities, resources, and curriculum,
offering personalized learning and support plans, promoting a collaboration between educators, families, and support services. Also addressing bullying, discrimination, and other barriers to inclusion. About challenges and considerations should be addressed. The diverse needs and background of all students should be provided adequate resources, training and support for educators, overcoming systemic biases and institutional barriers, ensuring implementing policies too. All teachers try to provide accommodations, adaptations, and support system to meet the individual needs of students and enable their active engagement and learning. It focuses on the holistic development of students, their physical, cognitive, and socio-emotional needs. In continue providing a comprehensive educational experience that nurtures the growth and development of the whole child and enable them to reach their potential. Important thing, collaboration and coordination among all stakeholders and should measure and evaluate the impact of well-being focused initiative. Due to having professional development for educators, it needs that equip teachers and staffs with knowledge and skills to promote well-being. Some training on inclusive practices and trauma-informed care. Also encouraging a culture of reflective practice and continuous learning. Brilliant point of view in inclusive education is that involve a collaborative effort among educators, school administrators, and families.
Maybe just to come in on some of those points, Mahavan, you mentioned that it's really important for teachers to be knowledgeable and competent to meet the needs of a diverse range of learners. And again, bringing it back to the Irish context in terms of disability at the moment, we are moving towards full inclusion, but and we have to do so and maintain the well-being of children with disabilities. But the research will show that they're at increased risk of bullying, experiencing high levels of rejection, feeling isolated in schools. So we definitely need to ensure that we do a lot more to protect the well-being of children with disabilities. So at the moment, policy providers are working very closely with schools. We've piloted a school inclusion model to address some of the concerns because and again, 86%, I think, for example, just taking one cohort of children, but 86% of children with autism now attend mainstream. But I suppose they're at risk of internal exclusion in the mainstream as opposed to the external exclusion that they've felt being segregated in special schools. So it hasn't, including children with autism into the mainstream hasn't really addressed exclusion. In fact, we've got that internal inclusion still. So we really need to look at the well-being of those children in our mainstream system as well. So I think there are some parallels between our different contexts.
So if I may add, so we have also parallels in Germany, to be honest. It's the same with students with disabilities. So we don't do a good job with them. They are still excluded from mainstream schooling. But in addition to that, we also experience racism, classism, ableism, lookism in school. And one thing which also comes into my mind is that we don't talk a lot enough about sexual violence, which students experience or if they observe it. And I think this is also a topic which is important related to children's well-being. And I think when we talk about like how could we handle it in the educational settings, it's on the one hand, it's important that we think about how can we teach students what they shouldn't accept, and secondly, they should learn where they get help. And regarding those children who experience sexual violence, I think it's also important that they get mental support and that they get additional support when they want to report their experiences. So, Bishra, I would be interested, how's the situation in Turkey right now? What are important topics over there?
Mm-hmm. In Turkey, we have a lot of different identities and cultures. So it should be addressed in more diverse way, I think. Because children's well-being may be influenced by various factors such as race, ethnicity, religion, gender, ability, cultural and family background, and migration background as well. So it could be create different understanding of well-being, different meaning of well-being for each child. For instance, in Turkey, a Syrian migrant child with a poverty background might face challenges related to language barriers, adapting a new culture, and lack of sense of belonging with the school environment. This child might be benefit from access to resources and food security and provide school supplies, but also language support services, cultural competency training for teachers. Additionally, they will also benefit from a teacher that understands them and try to get to know them. So, as in the example, being sensitive and responding to these differences requires different ecological systems to work together. Like Mahvand also said. So, prioritizing child well-being and understanding children's different meanings and needs could be seen as a fundamental for inclusion. So, Mahvand, how are your experiences in your school in Iran? Would you talk about that?
Yeah. We consider that how we can motivate students' attention to their physical health and nutrition and facilitate opportunities for sports and physical activities. Make a secure and supportive environment at school, which causes to be freedom to express themselves. Providing opportunities to have interactive and collaborative activities among themselves as much as we can. Using creative and active teaching method and cultivating positive and hopeful atmosphere and motivate them having dream to catch it. By embracing these elements of well-being and thriving of all students, fostering their academic, social, and personal growth.
Okay, it's been really interesting listening to so many different perspectives on well-being, and so many of them resonated with me, and really resonated when I think of my own case and my own experience. So it was any kind of key messages I'd like to bring, after speaking about my own experience and listening to all that really valuable information. One thing I would say is something that's really important is for all children to be seen, and that doesn't always happen. And I would really encourage teachers to use anything at their disposal to see children. And so whether that's listening to them, looking at them, watching out for all those signs that are telling them how they're feeling or what they're experiencing. Because I was definitely showing signs, but they just weren't picked up. And something I would also recommend is to really kind of think about a child's lived reality, because who you are as an individual is totally different to who I am as an individual, and how you respond to something is definitely going to be different to how I respond to something. and to just really be able to kind of put yourself into somebody else's shoes. It's a really tired expression, but it's been around a long time for a reason. It makes sense. Something I found really difficult, surprise, was transitions. And I particularly found the transition from home into school really difficult. And if there had been more congruity between school and home, and more connection, and more communication, and more partnership, and if I had felt that school was in somehow an extension of home, definitely it would have been a much easier experience for me. I want to say that the teachers I do remember as being a positive influence in my life were the nurturing teachers, and I needed tactile reassurance. It's amazing how much of a difference a hug made. And also what would have really helped was kind of breaks away from the immediate environment, just a checkout where I could go, okay, this is all too much for me now. I need to step back for a little bit. But something that I felt really strongly at the time was I was able to do things. I was able to talk about things. I was able to read. I was able to write. I knew lots of things. I was able to talk about lots of things, but it just didn't happen in school. And if there had been that teacher, that one teacher that saw me in a different way, or that just reached out to me and created that space for me to be heard in whatever way that was, whether it was what I was writing, what I was drawing, how I was looking, where my focus was, where my attention was, just enabling me to be heard would have made that experience an awful lot better for me. And that would have had an impact on the rest of my life, I know it would.